Today, we become legends.
Today's Titan Talk had Kabir on the show, so there was a lot of bug fix discussion, but also some good general Q&A, as well as some balanced hotfixes that were released since the last show. So without further ado, here's your quick Titan Talk recap. So first up, there's been a few hotfixes since the last show that had bug fixes, as well as some balance changes and an adjustment to win sprites. So let's go over those first. Win sprites can now be used for 2 seconds after someone uses them, which is a great change, and should make a big difference in making them less frustrating in terms of people just using them to jump away over a wall and be completely safe, especially after the removal of combat blink. Now you can follow them within 2 seconds, which should help a lot with that. They also said they were looking at removing some of the win sprites around the map, but that's not been done yet. There was a balance hotfix that went live today as well that actually enabled Cerberus aspect, so you can now play with that. I believe Poseidon aspect was also enabled temporarily, accidentally. That may be fixed by the time this video goes out, I'm not entirely sure, but at least at the moment you can play with Poseidon aspect. They'll probably disable that because it's going to actually officially go out on Monday. The tier 1 towers in Assault have been buffed. They didn't say exactly how they've been buffed in this update notes, but I imagine more tanky. That probably makes sense since the towers in Assault do go down very quickly. Deserter penalties have been adjusted as well. It will now be 5 minutes, 20 minutes, 1 hour, 12 hours, and 24 hours. This was previously 5 minutes, 20 minutes, 4 hours, and it capped out there. They also adjusted the deserter cooldown from 24 hours to 72 hours, so you have to wait longer before your deserter penalties reset. This is of course to address all of the dodging of lobbies and stuff like that. In terms of balance changes in this hotfix though, first up, Pridwin's damage has been nerfed on the initial explosion, but buffed slightly on the secondary explosion. The initial went from 65% to 40%, and the secondary went from 65% to 70%. So overall, it's a nerf of 20%, but especially so on the initial burst damage offered by Pridwin. Mystical Mail's damage has been reduced from 20 base plus 1.5 per level to 15 base plus 1 per level, which makes sense. This item is completely nuts, and having to wait another week and a bit for it to be dealt with an OB8 would have been painful. Shogun Sofuda has also had its attack speed aura reduced from 20% to 15%, which of course affects yourself as well. Moving into gods though, Aspect Thor is getting some pretty significant nerfs here, with the slow duration on his passive proc being reduced from 2 seconds to 1.5 seconds, the base heal on his passive proc being reduced from 4% max health to 3%, and the base protections per stack on his passive as well from 10 to 8. Amaterasu's aspect is getting another round of nerfs, with her basic attack damage going from 10 to 50, it's now 6 to 30. Crazy that this was 85 on launch. Her haste effect is also going down from 12.5% to 10%. And finally, Ares' passive is getting a nerf to its free strength and intelligence, with the strength going from 12.5% of protections from items to 8%, and the intelligence going from 100% of cooldown rate to 80%. That's it for balance though. Let's move into the rest of the show and the Q&A section. As mentioned in previous talks, be sure to tune in on Monday for the OB8 showcase that will have Kali, the new item specialization pass, some new items, and all the other stuff coming in OB8. They should be flash testing OB8 on Tuesday or Wednesday next week as well, so we can check it out. As I mentioned earlier, today's show had Kabir on instead of Kilgoon, and Kabir is the release manager for updates, which often involves a lot of bug tracking and fixing, so there were quite a few questions about bugs in the game on today's show. They said they're aware of some cases where you can't buy items in Assault even if you haven't left the fountain, and should have fixes for it hopefully by the end of today. Someone mentioned that Aphrodite's back off on the soulmate damage doesn't proc item effects, so they said they'll look into that. There was a question about Merlin not having various animations like stunned, knocked up, etc., and they said they are aware of it and working on a fix, probably for OB8 or maybe a hotfix for OB7. Hunbat Sleep resetting its cooldown when he gets a wheel exalted out of it is a known issue, and they're working on fixing it. Thanatos and its prisms will be enabled on Monday. Someone mentioned that Achilles being crippled after dashing stops him being able to throw the projectile, and they said they'll look into that. There was also a question of if the Magic the Gathering skins would ever come back, and they said it's kind of up in the air, simply because all of the crossover agreements were drafted for Smite 1, and they would need to hammer out a new deal for every single crossover for Smite 2 individually. They'd like to, but no current plans to get the old crossovers into Smite 2 at the moment. Someone asked if the alternate voice lines for abilities will come back to Smite 2, and they said they are in the game, but there's been some issues with them not playing or not playing as often as they should, and they're looking into it. Someone asked Kabir what god he's dreading bringing over the most in terms of bugs, and he said Janus, just due to all the mechanics around his portals and how many issues they can cause. Release Janus in Smite 1 could frequently portal outside the map and other hilarious issues, so this makes sense. There was a question about matchmaking updates, and Isaiah said he's been talking to Max, the matchmaking lead, about it, and he's been working on some stuff, some of which has already been implemented, but they're not quite ready to show all of what he's been working on just yet. Someone asked Kabir how working in UE5 versus UE3 has been so far, and he said probably the biggest thing is how quickly you can do things compared to Smite 1, and how often they can patch the game compared to its predecessor. There was a question if gods could be ported over faster at some point in the future, and Kabir tentatively said that he had an idea of allowing gods in live earlier than normal, but only in practice mode and customs to gather more feedback quickly, which in theory could speed up the release process. Like for example, the Assault dev test, they probably gathered way more feedback from that than they ever would have by flash testing or internally testing that map. Someone asked if we could be able to view a teammate that has an aspect active in the god selection screen in the lobby, and they said yes, they do want to add this as it's important for strategy, but they didn't give an ETA on when. There was a question of if you could order the tab screen by role, and again, they said they want to do this, but no ETA. Someone asked if bugs are easier to fix in Smite 2 than they were in Smite 1, and Kabir said definitely yes, but in the early days, they were actually harder due to the team still adjusting to UE5, but now that they're more comfortable, it's much easier and smoother to fix bugs in Smite 2. And finally, there was a question on the movement overhaul and what's going on with it, and Isaiah said they've gotten good feedback from it from the flash test, and it should be going live around Tuesday, which is good to hear. But that's everything discussed on today's Titan Talk. Be sure to subscribe to catch my future recaps, and I'll catch you guys in another one later on. Have a great day, and peace out, you nerds.